Hi, welcome to Conscious Conversations. I'm your host, Katie Augustyn. So, for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm the spiritual head of the Transformation Center based in Westport, Connecticut. And at the center, in addition to the individual sessions that I do as a transformation coach and an energy healer, we also have both online and in person classes, workshops, all sorts of interesting things happening, as well as sound baths in the backyard. And we do that, of course, when the weather is permitting. So I'm just going to put up our contact info so you can see how to get to us. Let's see. I know I have that somewhere. There it is. Yeah, so there it is, transformationcenterct.com. So all the information is there on all the events that we have throughout each month. And, the thing about it is everything we do at the center is really to help you get in touch with who you are. So that means to experience more self-awareness, to tune into your inner self, because I wanted to meet people and talk to people that are already doing that with their lives. They're already consciously creating a life that they love. Yeah. So, what I want to do is find out more about them, about their journey and what they're up to. And so you can learn from them and find out what they have to offer you. So, I'm thrilled today that my guest is Thea Litsios. Welcome to the show, Thea.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I met Thea a while ago, but we haven't done this in many years. So I'm glad you're able to do this. And I'm going to read a little bit about Thea, and I'm going to put up her contact info while I do, so you can see how to contact her. Yeah, so there's her website and email address. And Thea Litsios is a career coach and a certified Colby consultant, which you'll find out more about shortly. And she helps young adults, meaning late teens through 20s, to discover a college major or career path that is most aligned with their natural strengths and interest. And Thea does this through a set of unique assessments and coaching. She has found a great need in this age group, mainly because of the disruptions to their education over the last few years. And she's happy to be able to assist them in getting back on track. So that sounds awesome. Okay. So again, welcome to the show, Thea.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I am just, before we get into everything that you're doing now, I would just love to hear a little bit about your background for our audience.
Sure. So I was, like many young people, someone that when I was asked, what do you want to do? What do you want to major in college? It took me a while to figure it out. I changed majors once. I did all kinds of things. I ended up being a professional photographer for over 20 years, and I loved it. Half of that time I was a photojournalist, which was a really good fit. And then I had a photo studio, but because of changes in the economy and also technology, eventually I got ready to say, I'm ready to do something else. And it did take me a few years to figure out what that was. And on the pathway to that, I became a teacher of active dreaming. I became a certified hypnotist. I delved more into intuition, and I eventually became a life coach, which I did in 2020. And then as things evolved, I realized that there were a lot of people, especially because of COVID, really questioning what is it that they want to do in a career. So I did become a career coach last year, and have found that it's been really rewarding to help people discover a career path that really lights them up and gets them excited.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So I guess that's when I met you. That's what you were transitioning into, that
Right.
part of your career. And so then what led you or drew you to be working with young people now?
I truly believe in being guided by my intuition. And one of the things that is a real, that I pay a lot of attention to is synchronicity. So I was visiting a networking group, considering being a member, and someone in the group asked me if I worked with young people. And I was like, I could, there's no reason not to. Well, I visited another networking group to see which chapter I liked better. And someone asked me the same question, do you work with young people? So now I'm like, oh, okay, now my radar's up a little bit. And all of this happened within a 2-week period. And then I was talking on the phone to a new friend, and she says to me, do you work with young people? And I'm like, okay, universe, I'm listening. What do you want me to know? And she went on to tell me that when her son was younger, when he was 17, he was having a hard time trying to figure out what he wanted to do as a career. And so they hired a career coach. This person gave him some assessments, and he ultimately chose one of the careers that this person suggested. So that got me to thinking, like, what assessments would I want to use? And one of my coaches had given me a Kolbe assessment, and I got very curious about it, but she wasn't as knowledgeable about how to interpret it. So I did a little research and spoke to some more people, and I realized that it's really an incredible assessment. And so I decided to get certified in that. So it was really the questioning of the people that were around me that made me realize what a huge need there was for that age group.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I'm assuming they were asking you if you worked with young people because they knew young people personally that who could use some help in that regard.
Yeah, they're their own children, essentially.
Their own children.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like help a
Yes,
young person.
I can totally relate to that. Yeah. 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 So I love the fact that it happened 3 times, and then you're like, wait a minute, this is definitely a message that I'm getting loud and clear. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's really cool. So then your first step was to find out what would be the most useful tool with this age group. Is that kind of your thinking?
Yeah, or really with any age group, because I think part of what is challenging is, especially when you're younger, there are so many career opportunities now that I think people just are not sure, like, what direction should I go in? And it's really great to have an assessment that can give you some very concrete information, not just based on, what you like, but what you'd be actually really good at.
Hmm. And is it for specific careers or like general direction, or is it both?
Well, it's kind of both in the sense that, so when I became certified as a Kolbe consultant, what I was able to do is now share some assessments with my clients. And the Kathy Kolbe is the creator of these assessments. And the initial one is called Kolbe A. And what it does is it lets you know what your natural strengths are. And, we've all taken IQ tests. They measure the cognitive part of the brain. And then we've taken personality tests, which measure, the affective or feeling, how our feelings, personality. But there's a part of the brain that is usually not even considered. And it's called the cognitive part of the brain. It's actually the part of the brain that designates how we do things, because we all have a natural instinctive way that we like to take action. And it's not genetic. So you can have identical twins with very different profiles. And it measures literally, if you were left to do things the way you prefer, how would you take action? And surprisingly, there's many different ways that people approach this. And so it became really, really important for me to be able to give my clients some real concrete information, like, this is how you like to do things, because there are certain careers that line up better with certain, let's say, natural strengths than others. So once these people know what their natural strengths are, then there's a career test that can actually let them know which careers are in alignment with these.
Oh, I see. So they work. So there's like 2 assessments that work together.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's really interesting. And the first assessment, you end up with like what your interest, is that what how would you
No,
describe that?
the first assessment, which is you actually experienced it, it lets you know how you what are the components of how you like to take action. Because there are several categories, like, how do you like to deal with data? Do you like a lot of data and not so much? How do you deal with systems? Do you like a lot of systematization or systemized things, or do you like very little? How do you deal with risk? How do you deal with working with the 3D world? Do you like to work with structures in your hands or not? And then each person gets a very unique score, I would say, which lets them know their personal preferred way of taking action.
So it's like a profile of each person.
Yeah, it is. And of course, there's other components that are going to affect the individual, like their own preferences, their experience, different things. So it's not like this is the only thing that's going to help them choose, but it's a big component, because once you know how you like to take action, then certain careers are going to make much more sense to you.
So yeah, it sounds great. So when you give the assessment to somebody, what is like a typical reaction? Do they say like, "Oh wow, this totally, resonates," or this is exactly what I would have expected, or there surprises? How does it usually
Well,
play out?
what's interesting is a lot of the times it's very confirming for people, because it does ring true. Now, what's interesting is that in certain circumstances, let's say the educational system will lean towards certain inclinations, but if you lean in the opposite direction, you can always feel as if you're doing something wrong. But that's your natural way of doing things. Like with my profile, I need a deadline. So I love to work up to the last minute. Like I will wait to the last minute to start a project because I work better under pressure. But if a young person has that same profile and their teacher's like, "You've got to get this done right away," then the person is going to feel like they're working against their natural inclination. And in our training, there was a really interesting example that one of the teachers shared, which was that there was a young person who's teacher in school. One of them, the assignment was write a paper, but write your outline first, and then you can write the paper. And the person who was working with the Colby consultant is like, I need some information before I can write the outline. So how do I know what I want to write the outline on unless I do some research? And the teacher was, no, you have to do the outline first. And once the Colby consultant spoke to the teacher and said, this particular person likes to work with facts and he needs a certain number of facts. Once they explained that, then the teacher was able to say, "Oh, all right, you can do a little bit of research, then you write your outline, and then you can write the paper." Because the young student was paralyzed. He's like, "I can't act unless I have figures and facts." So there's ways that this can help you both how to be a better student, but also then how to know how you can navigate the world in a way that's just going to work better for you.
I wonder if also like once you're in a career that pretty much matches up with your inclinations, if it is also helpful in dealing with your coworkers, with your boss. Well, I guess you have to assume that they also took the assessment, because they're not going to be interested in what you are if they don't know anything about it.
Well, I will say this. So when you get trained as a Colby consultant, you can work with companies. I'm personally not choosing to do that. I'm choosing to work with individuals, but a Colby consultant can actually work with a company. They can do comparisons of individual people's assessments. They can also work with teams. So there's actually a lot of applications within the corporate world that people could use these if they wanted to. It's not the direction that I'm going in, but it's actually very, very useful, because there's all kinds of ways to know, is someone a good person, for this position? All kinds of things. How can we get our team to work better together? So yeah, it's very, very useful.
Yeah, that's what I was envisioning. Like once you're in that situation, how you can like optimize your productivity, your relationships, all of those things. Because if you know that you're a certain way, like you were describing, you work under pressure, like you don't like to do things in advance, but your coworker is kind of the opposite, who really likes more plotting, methodical ways of doing things, and they put you together. you know I mean, it's like you could use each other's strengths, or you could have this huge conflict,
Yeah, absolutely. And there is an assessment that actually compares people who are in a relationship, like couples, in terms of taking both of their profiles and letting them know how would they best, work together on things like finances and household chores and vacations. I mean, it's actually really kind of interesting, because when people have very different ways of doing things, it is really helpful to know what's your way of doing it and this is my way of doing it, so that we can at least find a middle ground if we're very different.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. In a personal relationship, it would be very helpful as well. Yeah, yeah. So are you finding that people are really um, using this in a way that's beneficial for them, or what?
Yeah, I'm finding both young people and parents really excited about the idea, because it is such a daunting question. Like, it's basically, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I think it's very hard when you're younger and you haven't had a lot of experience to know even what's out there. But I also think, with COVID and schools being closed and online learning, I think students got less of an opportunity to really explore, but also communicate with someone who could help them choose. And so I think the reaction has been really kind of being thrilled, like, oh wow, I can actually get some help in doing this. Like, this is this is great. Because I think even under the best of circumstances, it's a really difficult decision. And the last thing you want to do is go through 4 years of college and then get out and say, oh, you know what, I don't really want to do this. I took 1 year to decide I didn't really want to do my first major. So I can understand the challenge of that.
Yeah. So you start working with the kids while they're in like late high school to help them choose, like you said, a major, or maybe even what college to go to in the first place, right?
Well, I don't so much give them information on what college, but if they know a major that is going to be best for them, then they can do research and choose a college that would be good for them. I also work with people who are in college or even out of college, who have realized that, okay, I've got this major and I still don't know what to do with it. Or maybe I'm not in the right major if they're in the middle of college. So yeah, I actually work with all ages, but I kind of specialize with younger people because I think the need is so great right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense. So people are um, flocking to your to get the assessment done, I would think. Once the word, is it word of mouth, a lot of word of mouth, and getting this message out?
At this point is, yeah, I also like to lecture on the topic, because it's not very well known that there is this third part of our brain and how we act. I mean, Kathy Colby, who developed this assessment, said that, Aristotle and Plato spoke about this part of our brain, how we instinctively take action. But when, cognition and the thinking part of our brain became very popular, it was like people kind of stopped thinking about this. So that's why the assessment is so unique, because there really isn't any other assessment that measures this part of who we are. And it doesn't change very much over time, which is really interesting. They've done a lot of research and people have taken the test 20 years apart and it hardly changes at all, if at all. Whereas, you can do intelligence tests and personality tests, and those can change a lot over, a number of years, but this stays very much the same. So that's helpful too, because you're not going to take a test and then 10 years later say, oh, I don't really like doing things this way. You're in fact going to still have that way of doing things as your preferred way of doing things.
Oh, I see. So it is stable over time. Yeah.
It
Well,
is.
that is helpful if you're gonna get into something like that. So when you say cognitive, how do you spell that just for our audience? Because it's a word I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah, it's CONATIVE.
So
And it is,
cognitive.
in fact, the part of the brain that measures how you do things. So there's the thinking part of the brain, the feeling part of the brain. This is how you do things. And as I said, it's not genetic. You can have identical twins and they would have very different profiles.
Okay. Yeah, I think I love learning new things. This is always so fascinating to me. And I can see how it would be helpful, and I'm surprised that more people aren't aware of it, honestly, you know. So you're starting a new trend in our area. So when you end up with something, I think you call your MO, but it's not modus operandi, or is it
It
MO?
is. It is. It could all to say it in English, it's mode of operation. So when you know basically what your strengths are, how you naturally like to take action, then there's a second assessment that I give where, based on the first one, it's going to give you up to 1,200 career choices. And what's great about it is that it gives you career choices in your area of interest. It can rate them in terms of your probable success with that career. It can also give you choices in areas that you hadn't thought about. Like when I did the test, I did it out of curiosity. And one of the things that was fascinating for me is one of the top choices that came up was photojournalist. And there was like a 90% chance of success. Well, I know that's true because I was one. So it gave me a lot of faith in this test. It's like, okay, this is really accurate. Now, what was really curious is that in an area that is not so much an area of interest to me, it had things I'd never thought about, like astrophysicist. I was like, I don't even know what an astrophysicist is, but if I was younger, I might actually want to research it and say, what is this? Is this something that I might want to do? So that's why it's kind of fun, because we're not locking people into a very narrow band of what they could do. We're actually giving them choices where, they can see what would be the probable percentage of success if you went in that career direction. Because the second one is based on your natural strengths, what you find out in the first assessment. So it's very accurate, and it's really kind of fascinating, actually.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so when you say your chances of success, does that also take in consideration your happiness, for lack of a better word, in that career?
It does, in the sense that the percentage of success is based on how do you naturally like to take action. Like, what's really interesting is they didn't have studio photographer on that list for me. They had photojournalist. And because of my profile, I like things to change. I don't like to do the same things every day. I like a certain amount of risk. I love having deadlines. So all those parts of how I like to take action were part of that career choice. And when I did have a photo studio, which happened after I was a photojournalist, I was actually really bored. Now, I did a good job at it, but I wasn't happy because it wasn't in alignment with how I like to take action. Like, I like change, I like variety. Being in a photo studio and having people come in the same way every day was really boring for me. Now, what's interesting is that when you do have a job that's in alignment with how you naturally take action, it's actually less stressful, because you don't have to put out as much mental energy to do something because it's kind of your natural way of doing it. Now, that doesn't mean that if you happen to be in a job that has some elements that are not exactly aligned with your career, well, you can do them. It's just going to take a little more effort. You're going to have to think about it a little bit more, rather than having it being a natural way of doing things that I loved being a photojournalist. Give me a deadline, give me some crazy assignment, I'd be totally happy. So it's going to be in alignment with how you like to do things. Yeah.
Okay, now that makes sense, that it would be that if just like the rest of life, if we're in alignment, then the chances are we are going to be happy, fulfilled, satisfied, all of those things. And once we get out of alignment with either who we are or some other part of us, then it can be problematic. Yeah, no, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely.
Yeah, and the saying, like, do what you love, and that's then success will follow. Do you think that applies here?
I do, but I think what's interesting is this is less about what you're doing it than how you're doing it. And I think that's why that's so interesting, is because if you like to do things in a particular way, but you're not sure what kinds of careers would allow you to do that, that's what's so interesting about the second assessment, because it gives you so many choices that you're not going to feel locked in, but you're going to, I think, have kind of more of an expansive view, because rather than having to consider every career out there, because they do tell you some careers you should not do, like don't do this, it's helpful because then you can say, oh, wow, you can think of different careers as possibilities. And then, when I'm coaching with people, I actually help them go through some of the possibilities, like, well, let's consider, would you want to do this or would you want to do that? And then they can do a little bit of research and find out, oh yeah, I like this one. No, I don't want to do that one. So that they can narrow it down to a few things, what that would then allow them to have a career that they can actually not only feel confident and I'm going in a good direction, but then also really happy with the results. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, that's really the ultimate, the goal is to be happy and fulfilled and feel also like you're making a difference. I think that's important for so many people, if not everybody, probably everybody, I would think. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So you help people once they take the assessment to interpret the results, and then like what is the process that you help?
So
How do you do it?
basically, I usually have about 6 weeks of coaching where we kind of explore the types of things that the individual is interested in the beginning. And then we kind of look at some of the career options based on their strengths. Like, let's say someone has always wanted to be a lawyer. Well, there's many, many different types of lawyers. So now what we know what their strengths are, I can direct them towards studying a particular type of law that would really be good for them. Or let's say someone wanted to be in medicine, they might have a particular assessment that says they would be good working with their hands and tools. Well, they might make a great surgeon. So there are certain directions that the assessment will help you figure out what would be the best expression of what your strengths are. And I think doing research is really helpful because, as I said, I have no idea what an astrophysicist done, but when I was younger, I might want to know because maybe I want to choose that, So I also help guide my clients to kind of dig a little bit deeper, like what do they love? What would be a great expression for them of a particular career? And it's almost like trying on some different hats. So let me try this one on. How's that feel? And you're like, yeah, but not quite right. So then we try something else on. And so by the end of the 6 weeks, they not only know some careers that would be really good for them, but they also know how to dig deeper to find out the answer for themselves so that they've got these skills that they can use, the rest of their life.
Yes, I love that. That's perfect because, because they're still young. They need these, because it's really about looking inside, like you said. You can have a coach, and that's wonderful. But if the coach can teach you how to do it yourself, that's even better, because we all have the resources inside that we need. It's just a matter of learning to access them, I think.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing too is, since the Kolbe A, the initial assessment, doesn't change over time. Let's say this person gets into their 40s and they've had a career they like, but now they're like, I want to do something else. They can still use that initial consultation and then take the career assessment again, because in 20 years, there's going to be more careers available that weren't available when they were younger. So now they can look into it and say, okay, let's see what's available now. And then they can get like an updated version.
Yeah, that's great. Good point. So career changes are also in part of it. Yeah. Well, wow. I think we're just about out of time. Is there something that you want to say before we wrap up that I haven't asked you or anything?
I do want to let people know that if you as an individual, or if you're a parent and you have a young person and you're interested in possibly working with me, I offer a free 30-minute consultation that you can sign up for right on my website. And, we can explore, would this be a good fit for you or your young person?
All right, that's great. I'm going to put up your slide again so people can see how to contact you. There it is. So thealitsios.com, or email her at thealitsios.com. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Thea. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Katie. It's been great.
So, and thank you everybody for tuning in today, and see you the next time. Namaste. Bye-bye.